You're listening to Answers for the Family with Alan Cardoza, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Greetings to all of you listening around the world, and a warm welcome as we bring you another edition of the Answers for the Family radio show. I'm your host, Alan Cardoza, and if you're a regular listener, thank you for joining us once again. If this is your first time, please make yourself at home as we bring you Answers for the Family. Now, each week, this show will address issues such as locating a runaway teen, family crisis intervention, building self-esteem, dealing with addictions, lasting health, and so much more. And having over 30 years' experience working with families in crisis, I've been fortunate to meet and work with some of the top professionals in many of the helping fields and skilled authors who are working to make this world a better place for all of us. Now, you all can do me a big favor. Please check out some of our past shows at answersforthefamily.com to hear some informative and entertaining guests, as well as dynamic co-hosts discuss ways for you and your loved ones to become happier, healthier, and more at peace with whatever is going on in your life. I am also looking for some show ambassadors who will forward at least one of our shows to your social media group or to someone you know who can benefit from a particular subject. I want you to know that I truly appreciate it, and this is just another way that we can make a positive difference in the lives of others. Now understand that a lot of the stuff that's going on out there in media, a lot of the negativity and stuff, the only way that we can get around that is to bring people to shows like this, bring people to websites like the Dare to Be Kind movement, bring people to things like that, introduce them to that. And if we can do that, we can pull away from and take our eyes and ears away from a lot of what the divisiveness that's being put out there by a lot of mainstream media. So if you want to make a difference, this is one of the ways that you can start. Now, the topic that we have today is one that unfortunately many people know somebody or have gone through. And, this one is called, Returning to Hope and Joy from a Shattered Life. Now, before this show, as I do my usual research, which I do on all of the shows, I thought, what is the word we use to refer to someone who has lost a child? Well, I found that a wife who loses a husband is called a widow. A husband who loses a wife is called a widower. And a child who loses his parents is called an orphan. There is no word for a parent who loses a child. That's how awful the loss is. Now, that is a quote by J. Neugenborn from An Orphan's Tale. The closest that I could come up with is a word called vilama, which means against a natural order, and it's as in the Chinese saying that says the gray-haired should never bury those with black hair, as in our children should not precede us in death. Our guest, Kris Francoeur, is a writer, educator, and a grieving mother who has found joy and light again through the practices of conscious and deliberate gratitude, unconditional acceptance, and connection with nature. That, along with master's degrees in counseling psychology and educational leadership, Kris writes with authority about grief and moving forward in what can be a very busy and stressful world. Now, a published author of fiction, Kris has published 3 romance novels, More Than I Can Say, That One Small Omission, and The Phone Call. She used her pen name, Annabelle Rose. Now, Kris currently lives in Vermont with her husband and youngest son and a small herd of alpacas, a flock of chickens, and several hives of bees. She loves to spend time with her family, spending time in the garden, and spinning the alpaca fiber for yarn for knitting. Her book, Of Grief, Garlic, and Gratitude, Returning to hope and joy from a shattered life, Sam's love story follows the first 30 months after her son, Sam's death from an accidental prescription overdose. Kris shares her journey from the first crushing days to her eventually being able to find light, joy, and hope again. Kris, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It is truly an honor to be on your show.
Well, I've got to tell you that I read a lot of books as part of this show. I read a lot anyway, and this is one of the most touching stories I have ever read, and some of the things that we're learning in society these days, that a lot of the things that are going on, we're having an opiate crisis. We're having a lot of things that are reaching the news, and what we're finding is a connection within the brain to trauma. That any of these things are bringing trauma into those of us that are still here. So that the trauma that we're all going through. And so I felt reading your book that I think anybody that has gone through trauma, not necessarily having lost somebody, could certainly benefit from it. And I just want to thank you for writing something that must have been incredibly difficult to write.
Thank you. It was incredibly difficult to write, but it also was a story we needed to tell, because so many, after Sam's death, when we went looking for resources, there really was very little out there about losing a child in this way. And we needed to bring the issue out of the shadows. Well,
in the prologue, you say your life is divided into two parts, by a glaring clear line. The first part being anything before October 9th, 2013, and the other everything after. Now, this book obviously is about after, but let's go back and start by telling a little bit about yourself, your family, and specifically your son, Sam. What was he like?
Sam was, from the second he was born, he was an old soul, and he was light in love in a way that we knew as a family, but we didn't fully understand how much it impacted people outside of the family. He was the kid who, as a little boy, you had to hold on to him at the county fair, because he would wander off and start up a conversation with somebody he had never met before. And he just was so interested in everybody. And he loved his siblings. He was the middle of our sons and had an older sister as well. He was the glue in all of their relationships. There's a large age range in our kids. And he was the one that they all connected to most closely prior to his death. He could make you laugh. He could make you insanely angry, because he would push you to think about your values and how you treated people. And everything in life was an adventure, and every person was worthy of love and getting to know them and truly valuing them. And that was just a gift. And we as parents, he wasn't an easy child to parent because he questioned everything. But his ability to love and see people truly was a gift to us all.
Wow. One of the things that as I was going through the book, and one of the thoughts that came to mind for me was, I don't think I could write the book. I try to put myself in people's positions. So the journey, and obviously for anybody that reads the book, you'll realize just how painful the journey has been for you. Talked a little bit about, why you wrote it, because there wasn't that much out there. But the story also, you go into, you talk about social media in your life and how you use that and how that has affected you, both prior to your loss and somehow become a major means to communicate after. Explain a little bit about that, the kind of pros and cons of how that has helped or hurt you going through all of this.
Sure. It really started in the first 24 hours after Sam's death. I posted on Facebook that he had passed away. And it was done really, the word of mouth had spread very, very quickly about his death. But it was to make sure that people, his friends, family members that we hadn't thought to call, that they would know. And, that in and of itself was only meant as a sharing information, and that was going to be it. But over the next few days, even the outpouring of love and support that came through social media to us was just amazing. And then the day actually after Sam's service, there was this bizarre rainbow in the sky, a beautiful sunny fall day in Vermont. And there was this rainbow. And I wrote about the rainbow on social media, that even in the midst of such absolutely unbearable pain in losing him, there was still that moment of beauty, and that I could appreciate it, and I was thankful for that rainbow. And so I wrote about the rainbow. And over the next weeks, I began writing every day and posting it on Facebook about what had happened that day for which I was grateful. And it was a combination of, for me, the grief was so profound and so deep. Sam and I were very, very close to each other. And I felt like such a failure, as someone with advanced degrees in counseling and education and that, and having him pass away in the way he did. I felt so guilty and like such a failure, and I was destroying myself. And writing about something good that happened each day made me stop and realize that there was still beauty and joy and light and hope in the world. It also was a way, which is not the case for a lot of families that experience the death of a child to an overdose. We had incredible community support because Sam was so loved. But it was also, my writing on social media was to recognize the efforts people were putting in to support us. My secretary who got me soft Kleenex because I cried every single day at work, and at least if I had the soft kind, I didn't look like Rudolph. And, all those sorts of things, it was a way to recognize what people had done. But when I did it, it made my heart lighter for a few minutes. And doing it every single day let me find the light again in the world.
Wow. Well, and that's, I talk a lot about, social media and things, on the show, and some of the negative things. So I wanted to make sure that people understand that there are some incredibly positive things too, that we're not always just trying to put that down. So, again, thank you for sharing that, because, when it comes right down to it, there really are a lot of, wonderful people out there that are going to, share some very heartfelt things. Mm-hmm. And so just because at times we talk about some of the negatives of the media or something like that, there's a lot of benefits. And so I'm glad that it was a very positive situation for you. We have a listener question that's coming in. And again, I want to thank those that either call in or that send in messages ahead of time. I know we have a lot of teachers and stuff that listen, so they're in class in the middle of the day. They send things in ahead of time.
Sure.
This one reads, it says, I believe people are in denial of how much access young people have to drugs. One of my dearest friends lost her 21-year-old daughter to an opioid overdose during her first years of college. She feels enormously guilty because she knew something was wrong, but was afraid to push the conversation. I applaud you for writing this book, as regardless of the age or status, family, friends, and parents should not feel afraid or embarrassed to talk about the warning signs that they observe and ask tough questions. And this is from Heather in Utah. So, Kris, what's your thoughts on that? And I know we mentioned a little bit about the fact in the introduction, that it was an accidental overdose of prescription drugs. There still are a lot of people that then become, addicted because of something that started out as a prescription. So,
sure.
What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's absolutely, unequivocally, I agree with Heather that, there is still this stigma, and there's still for many adults, it's very uncomfortable to bring up these conversations with their children. And, we as a family, we had known Sam had issues with primarily marijuana and drinking. He had been arrested in college for DUI. We had gone through that process. He had also been diagnosed as having bipolar disorder. And at the time of his death, he actually had gone into treatment for the bipolar disorder. He was on medication for it and counseling, and really more stable than we had seen him in quite a while. The piece in terms of sort of not talking about those things, and I speak about this often in events around New England, Sam died from putting a fentanyl pain patch in his mouth. It was a pain patch that he had stolen from my father. And my parents, Sam was staying at his grandparents that night just to hang out with them. They were all very close to each other. My parents had made sure that everything in the house, including Advil, was locked up, because anything that they knew could be a problem, because they didn't want to give him temptation. The fentanyl pain patch was the only thing not locked up, because we had no knowledge at the time that this could be of concern. And what we found out in his death, when the medical examiner that came to my parents' house, when she determined his cause of death, she made an offhanded comment that there had been 3 fentanyl pain patch deaths in our part of Vermont in the 6 weeks prior to his death. Oh. And those deaths had never made the news. I mean, in my grief and in my research skills and those things, I went back through everything I could find, and those deaths had never been discussed publicly as being from fentanyl pain patches. And really, we live in a community that has a very, very affluent private college nearby, and they have worked very hard at maintaining the facade that there are no substance abuse issues in the area. And, for us, I can't say that that if Sam had reached a point in his substance abuse that he was putting a pain patch in his mouth, I'm not sure that if it hadn't happened that day, it wouldn't have happened another way. But my parents should not have to live with the guilt of not having locked that up, because the community hid what had happened in those 6 weeks. And so I think that opening the conversation, talking about prescription medications, in Vermont, one of the big issues is when teenagers have their wisdom teeth removed and they're being prescribed huge amounts of opioids for the pain, and not without a lot of supervision of how to use them, how to limit them, how to make sure they are disposed of properly afterwards. And those are all things we need to talk about openly as a society, because if we don't have the knowledge, if we're not open about it, we're going to lose even more incredible young people.
I'm so glad that you touched on that, because with some of the families that we have worked with, where we are transporting their young person to a specialized program for drug and alcohol issues, and very often I will talk to these parents and we'll be picking them up from a major city, a large city. And they'll say, well, as soon as he comes back, we're going to move to a small town where where they don't have these problems. And,
yeah.
And thank you, because they need to hear it from somebody other than me, that unfortunately, this is not something that is only an inner city problem or a large city problem. This communication needs to go across the board. It needs to go to every community, not just the major cities. So thank you for sharing.
And it's also, too, it's not, and this is part of why, while I wrote the book, it was a family decision. I would never have aired as much as I did about our family without the support of my husband, our parents, our children. But one of the things we kept hearing was, there is for Vermont, a city 20 miles south of us that has a higher rate of diversity. And you hear people openly talking about how, that city has a drug issue because of minority populations in it. And, no, this is a kid who came from a family, parents married to each other, educated family, good medical care, good mental health care, all of those things. And we still had an addiction issue in our family.
Yeah. So, no, yeah. Again, it's a message that really needs to be heard. So we have another message that has come through, and this one says, I feel honored to work for an orthopedic physician in Washington, D.C., who closely monitors the use of pain medications for young athletes in his care. He speaks with coaches and parents frequently and schedules to see these young patients regularly to monitor their healing progress and ensure they are being pushed to return to the field or onto the court, to ensure that they are not, the word not isn't there, so I'm adding it, pushed to return to the field or onto the court prematurely. Perhaps we would not see kids with sports injuries get hooked on opioids if we had more responsible doctors such as this, and that's from Virginia in D.C. Talk a little bit about some of the doctors that you spoke with.
I totally agree with Virginia because I see it often as an educator. We see very frequently doctors that are prescribing, rather than prescribing one or two opioid pain pills, literally 5 or under. They're prescribing 10, 15, 30, and then renewing the prescriptions. And there isn't the close, understanding, of course, if a child's over 18, they need to give permission for their parents to be involved in the conversation. But making sure that people understand the strength of these medications, their potential for causing addiction, and how quickly it can happen and how easy it is to get them. And, what we have heard from doctors is that, they really want to control it, they want to limit it, but if they're getting calls from parents or from students or kids saying that, their knees hurt or this hurts, that they want to stop the pain because they feel it will help in the healing. It will if it's done properly. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's going to lead to a whole other set of problems.
Yes. So again, I agree. And Virginia, thanks so much for taking the time to send that information in, because we all need to work together in these areas. And that means, educators, doctors, and parents together. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. We're going to take a break. So for everybody out there, please stay with us. And if you would like to look at more of what Kris is doing, you can go to her website, which is authorfrancoeur.com, and that's AUTHORKFRANCOEUR.com. EUR.com. And if you're driving, don't try to remember that or write that down. We will also have that on the Answers for the Family website. So please stay with us. We'll be right back. You're listening to Answers for the Family.
Founded over 30 years ago to meet the needs of families in crisis, West Shield has continually focused on resolving issues that negatively impact families and businesses. Our signature therapeutic transportation service helps to ensure that adolescents in crisis are safely transported to specialized schools, programs, and treatment centers with unsurpassed experience and success. We are supported by our full-service licensed investigation agency that has legally, professionally, and compassionately located hundreds of runaways and teens. We are experienced and qualified to help, offering solutions which may include referrals to our international network of top professionals in the fields of educational consulting, psychology, psychiatry, and investigations. Simply put, West Shield Adolescent Services and West Shield Investigations are the best solutions when your family is facing a personal crisis. Call 1-800-899-8585, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's 1-800-899-8585, or visit our website at westshield.com. Thank you.
And we're back. You're listening to Answers for the Family. Our guest today is Kris Francoeur, and her book is Of Grief, Garlic, and Gratitude, Returning to Hope and Joy from a Shattered Life, Sam's Love Story. So, Kris, now your life was that of a professional writer. So you're writing romance novels, with the happily ever after stories. I mean, that's the way that in which romance novels are written, right? Everything ends in happily ever after. But now in your personal life, obviously you're seeing that maybe that isn't always that way. How are you now continuing to do things to where you're finding joy, and trying to now get others to sort of see the same thing as much and as fiercely as possible?
It's a combination of approaches. I continue to write the happily ever after romances. But in writing the book about Sam, it was looking for really a how-to guide for, your life has completely, totally fallen apart. Here are some ways that might help you find your way back to light, to joy, to hope. And so I write about the topics often, I speak about the topics, and trying to get the word out about both the concerns of addiction in general, but ways in which we can love everyone, support everyone, and how we interact with each other in moments of stress or grief or, something devastating has happened. It's interesting. We also, as a family, we, continue to work through our grief about losing Sam. And in the last year, my husband, Sam's dad, was diagnosed with ALS, with Lou Gehrig's disease. And having to revisit, I've continued the practice of daily gratitude, since publishing the book. But having to revisit if I truly believe that gratitude and unconditional love and connection to nature and putting myself out there trying to make the world a better place, if I truly believe in that I need to do that even as my heart is breaking again, as, my husband struggles with this illness. And that has been a journey that I wasn't sure in those first few weeks after my husband's diagnosis that I would be able to find my way back to that sort of gratitude and hope. And I have found that it continues to work.
That's huge. That is huge. Now, how has writing, the book, of Grief and Garlic changed how you write your romance novels?
What a great question. I think it has made me more aware of the rawness of human emotion. And I think as I write now, I think my depictions of emotion are more realistic.
Okay.
I have a new novel coming out in January, and as I review that one compared to my earlier novels, the emotion seems more authentic to me. The writing of Grief, Garlic, and Gratitude, I worked with two incredible editors, both of whom have worked with me extensively on fiction. And one is sweetness and light and hugs and puppy dogs, and the other tends to make me yell at least once in an interaction because she pushes me very hard. Together, they both held my hand and kicked me in the rear end when I needed it in writing this book. And I think the skills that they brought out in me as a writer in that process have carried through to my novels.
Wow. Well, which that also now goes to the concept of community, having people around us. When we go through something, we all are going to go through something. We all are going to lose someone. So having those people around you that you can trust, that are going to be there for you, and in some cases, even as you said, giving you a little kick in the backside, giving us the things that we need to get through the things that we're all going to go through at some point in time. So it's a blessing to have them. Now, in the book, you also you talk about when you spoke with the funeral director who had asked about flowers, and you said that you said that we didn't want a donation of flowers because you said that was not Sam, that he was more garlic, squash, hot peppers, and Lego bricks. Is that how you came to the title of the book? Just because it was how you felt about him?
It was. Sam found his career happiness in working on an organic farm. And he found the working in the dirt and seeing things grow, it gave him hope and peace in a way that we had never seen before. And garlic was the thing that he loved the most on the farm. And so we did decorate the meeting house with garlic that he had grown on the farm. And the farm then gave us the garlic. And we were able to plant it on our property and continue to have garlic growing. It was garlic that Sam had touched and held and planted originally. And that garlic, the cycle of growing garlic each year, gives us a chance. It's planted right around the time of the anniversary of Sam's death. It's part now of the ritual of both celebrating Sam and grieving for him simultaneously. And that garlic, when it comes up in the spring, there's that just rush of hope and, the wonder of the growing things in the world. And so it's, our grief, our garlic, and our sense of gratitude for our community and the love we share, all of those are constantly interconnected.
See, to me, that is so beautiful. And it also seems like it is a time in which, you can have those beautiful memories that you have of him. And it sort of is a time in which, you know that it's coming so that you can prepare for it and take it all in. So I think that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Now, one of the questions that I've asked a variety of people, they call it my magic wand question. We talked obviously about the opioid crisis and such, and different sides of communities that deal with it. If you had a magic wand today and you could use it to make a difference, what would you do with it?
I would do several things with it. Obviously, the magic wand ultimately that I would use in my life is to bring Sam back. Right. Recognizing that that's not possible. I am very concerned as both a grieving parent and as an educator, the increasing stress levels and anxiety levels of the youth in the United States. And I would make changes to allow for more mindfulness practice, more outdoor time, more healthy play, unscripted activity time for kids, and more mental health services readily available for anybody that wanted them. Those would be the things as I look at, on this journey, we've met many, many young people suffering with addiction or in recovery and trying to stay clean each day. And when we talk, we hear about their early levels of stress, their early levels of anxiety, and untreated mental health issues. And so that's what I would do if I had a magic wand.
Well, and I love the fact that you brought up mental health. It is certainly an area that I believe that we need a lot more assistance in. But I also wanted to tie in mental health and romance novels. I started thinking about it as I was doing my research, and I thought, let's go back to before television. So before television, what was the escape? What was the thing for and especially more for younger women, but for anyone to have an escape where you can go somewhere and sort of live in a fantasy world without any danger. There's no danger in that. There's dangerous fantasy worlds that people go into, and unfortunately, I tie some of those to drugs. But this is just something that a lot of people went to do, and that was their mental health. So let's talk about that and the benefits of mental health through escaping through a wonderful novel.
I think it's a wonderful way, as you say, to escape for a little bit. And I think, I write novels under the name of Annabelle Rose, and Annabelle Rose was my maternal grandmother. She was a flapper dancer in the 20s, very, very strong, independent woman. But she was also the first person to ever hand me a romance novel. And my mother was horrified. My mother, from a feminist standpoint, thought this was just awful. But my grandmother gave it to me as something to read while I was hanging out at her house in the summer as a teenager. And it was that escape. I could read about, the first one I ever read was about something that happened in Monaco, and I learned about Monaco, and it was wonderful. And I think that for any of us, whether it's a romance novel or a great spy story or whatever it is, it gives us a little break from our own brains. And that's a really important thing. We all occasionally need to get out of our own brains.
No, I agree, and I know that we talked again a little bit in the introduction about the fact that you're doing a lot with nature. That's another way for us to get out of our brains as well. But I think the art of writing something good and then the value of that to those of us reading it is that we're also adding in our own imagination. And if we're watching a movie, and I love movies, and if we're watching a movie or a television show, it's kind of the imagination of the director. It's not really our imagination. And so and there are many books that I have read that I would then see the movie and I would think, well, no, I saw it this way. I saw the protagonist to be, more like this person. So I just wanted to get that information out because I think there's so many people out there now that picking up a book is not their first, their first thought when it comes to, I need to get away. I need to kind of unwind or kind of get away from whatever it is that's the stressors of life at that moment. And I want a lot of people to know that picking up a really good, well-written book and using that and go sit on the beach somewhere or go sit on a mountaintop or something, that to me is one of the greatest things that we can do, but I don't know that a lot of people are talking about it.
I totally agree. And one of the things I often ask out on social media is anybody that has read one of my books to, if they can, send me a picture of where the book has gone. And I love to see where my books are being read. And it's interested me how many people, both who knew Sam or know us, and those who don't, that send me pictures of reading the book about Sam, and they're sitting on the top of a mountain. And Sam loved to hike and climb mountains, and so it makes me laugh because it's almost as if his spirit guided them to go sit on that mountain and read the book.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think they can do that with whatever it is that they're going through. If you've gone through trauma, I think this is a great book for people to go up on that mountaintop or sit on that beach and read. But you don't have to have just gone through trauma to also pick up, a romance book, a good romance
Absolutely.
book, and go and sit down and enjoy. And again, it doesn't have to always be outdoors. Sometimes when it's raining, you can do the same thing indoors in front of the fireplace. But I think that I talk a lot about turning off the news, turning off the things that are trying to gain access to your brain, and you don't have to let them do that. You can choose to take it wherever you want, and sometimes there are much more relaxing and pleasant places to take it.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree.
So now, share a little bit about. Pick one of your romance books. Share a little bit about that for everybody so that they can kind of understand where that might take them.
Sure. I have a new one coming out in January, but the one that I would mention is More Than I Can Say, which came out about a year and a half ago. And the main character is a woman named Georgiana, who is an educator in Vermont, and she has a 2,000-pound pet bull who lives with her on her little farm, and she ends up making some poor choices on a business trip and getting involved rather quickly with her new boss. And then that relationship, they decide they can't have a romantic relationship. And then we have to see where they go over the next year with that. And it's a story about, how we deal with our past, how we deal with untreated trauma, and how we can have fun and laughter and find love in the strangest places.
Well, I'm intrigued already. So, well, Kris, I've just got to tell you, I really want to kind of acknowledge you for writing something that, as I said earlier, I don't know that I could have in the same situation. I think that we're in a time right now to where it's a book that a lot of us really should read, and. Again, I just really want to thank you for taking the time and writing it. I want to thank you for coming on the show. And for anybody out there, if you would like to be able to either get the book or you'd like to be able to just go to the website again, you can go to author Kris Francoeur. And again, the spelling will be on the Answers for the Family site. But again, I really just want to thank you, Kris.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to join you. And, to your listeners, I appreciate their time as well. It's an uncomfortable topic, and I really appreciate their taking their time to listen.
And actually, as you were saying that, it dawned on me. I mean, as an educator, and what would you say to the teachers out there, specifically, knowing that I know that we have a lot of teachers because a lot of them have either called in or emailed or texted us or whatever. What would you say to them in how they can help when they're dealing with a student that may have gone through or that they can see has gone through something and they're not sure what it is?
Keeping that open heart, that A lot of times in our lives, we don't need someone to fix something for us. We just need them to sit with us, to hold our hand, to give us a hug, to just be in silence with us. And I think for us as educators, we always want to fix things for our students. And sometimes the greatest gift we can give is just plain that unconditional acceptance and love, and letting the student guide us in what they need. And I use the example a lot. Our youngest son, who was so very close to Sam, he was very clear with us that he did not want he went to an incredible school, that he did not want them fussing over him, that it made him uncomfortable. What he needed was just at times a quiet place where he could go and just sit for a few minutes and not have to talk to anyone. And there was a teacher who gave him that space to do that. And that was a gift that allowed him space and time to heal in his own way. And I think that's what we need to do as educators, is listen to both the verbal and the nonverbal communication we're getting, and honor it, and just unconditionally accept our students.
Well, that was beautiful. And I think there's probably a lot of people out there, I'm one of them, that feels like you were talking directly to me.
Good.
As someone whose kids have said many times, Dad, you don't have to fix everything.
Yep.
So, yes, that was perfect. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you. And to your readers, I hope they'll join, check out my blog and join us on this journey.
All right. Thank you. And
thank you.
For everybody out there, please be sure to put us on your calendar and tune in next Monday, when we will be joined by Dr. Kelly Harding to discuss the rabbit effect. Live longer, happier, and healthier with the groundbreaking science of kindness. And please visit our archives of past shows at answersforthefamily.com, or you can subscribe to the show, which is better yet. You can do it through iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Vimeo, Spreaker, and iHeartRadio. If you like what you hear, please leave a review. It'll help us reach more people, and we greatly appreciate it. The next time you're on Facebook or Twitter, please remember to stop by our page, check out some of our latest posts, and if you like them, please like us and continue to spread the word. Now, I want to talk a little bit about something that is key to this particular show. And that is, there is a book out there, another book, that if anybody is going through something that you might want to check out, and this one is called Tirabar and the Legend of the Teardrop Tree. So that would be another one, because what it talks about, it's also talks about dealing with grief, but there's also a tree that also makes a nice gift. And on the little box that the tree is on, it says, "Let your sorrow fall on me. I'll cry for you. I'm a teardrop tree." And that is on a little trinket box. So if you want more information on that, you can go to teardroptree.com. So for everybody out there, please be good human beings. Have a wonderful week, and be with us again next week on Answers for the Family.
You're listening to Answers for the Family with Alan Cardoza, right here on LA Talk Radio.